Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, and remotely in Fillmore, California, I'm Katie.
Hi, man.
I'm Karin.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Good morning, everybody. If we sound different, we have to record via Zoom today again because I am stuck at home with Corona. So I got my throat coat tea here and I'm going to do my best not to cough, but I'm feeling pretty good and I am ready to talk about a book.
Woo-hoo. I hate throat coat, but it really works.
It works. It's so gross, but it works very well. I put a lot of honey in it. So
for those of us who like black licorice, we're kind of in love with it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know I'm an oddity. Not very many people in this world really like black licorice like I do. So
there are other flavors of it too, though, which I have not explored very carefully. There's one that's grosser.
Oh, great.
But then I think there's like a lavender flavor, like a more lavender hinted one, and some other flavors, but straight throat coat works.
I've been trying to get James to drink it all week because he also has Corona. And I'm like, you'll like it, I promise, because he likes black licorice. So maybe I just have to like make him a cup and make him drink it because it does work so well. But yeah, I hate it.
I did do at home medicine, the Starbucks medicine bombs.
Oh, yeah.
That was my go-to during my Rona time.
Yeah, I've just been drinking a lot of tea with lemon and honey. Yep. So anyway, today's book we are talking about was my choice. We are talking about Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. So the blurb on the back of the book cover says, the story begins in 1618 in the German Duchy of Württemberg. Plague is spreading, the 30 Years' War has commenced, and fear and suspicion are in the air throughout the Holy Roman Empire. In the small town of Leonberg, Katharina Kepler is accused of being a witch. Katharina is an illiterate widow known by her neighbors for her herbal remedies and her successful children, including the eldest, Johannes, who is the imperial mathematician and renowned author of the laws of planetary motion. It's enough to make anyone jealous, and Katharina has done herself no favors by being out and about and in everyone's business. So when the deranged and insipid Ursula Reinbold accuses Katharina of offering her a bitter witchy drink that has made her ill, Katharina is in trouble, facing the threat of financial ruin, torture, and even execution. Drawing on real historical documents and infused with the intensity of imagination, sly humor, and intellectual fire for which Rivka Galchen is known, Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch is a touchingly illuminates a society and a family undone by superstition, the state, and the moral convulsions of history. So it is a fictionalized account of the events of Katharina Kepler's life, who was a real person. She was the mother of the famous astrologer Johannes Kepler, who's known for discovering the three major laws of planetary motion and was a key figure in the 17th century scientific revolution. So I knew he was a real person. I didn't realize that this was a true story, basically.
No, I just like, oh yeah, Kepler. That is a scientific name.
Yeah, I was researching the book.
I did not make that connection.
Yeah, after I started it, I started looking, like I was like Googling this book and I was like, oh, I've heard that name. So going into it, I sort of knew, but I didn't realize until after I finished the book and I was doing more research before this morning that Katharina Kepler and this story of his mother is an actual true story. It's a fictionalized version of it, but.
Well, I got wondering when, is The Little Prince is not his work, right?
The what?
The Little Prince, the story of the boy who goes to the moon.
No, okay. That's a French author.
Okay. Because I was like, the book that the widow's selling at the end the premise sounded like The Little Prince. I had wondered, because there were so many like specific references to moments, like fixed moments, that I was wondering if it was a true story, but I didn't take the time to look it up. So thank you for finding that out.
Yeah. I'm going to read a portion of the Wikipedia entry about Katharina Kepler. to give us a little backstory. So she was married to Heinrich Kepler and had one daughter and three sons. One of them was Johannes. In 1615, a witch trial was initiated by Einhorn, who in his reign in the Protestant town of Leonberg accused 15 different women of sorcery and executed 8 of them. He acted in accordance with the will of the government and the public, which had asked for investigation of sorcery and issued an arrest of Katharina Kempler in 1615. Ursula Reinbold had accused Katharina of giving her a potion after an argument that made her sick. Johannes Kepler defended his mother himself. Her son took her away to Linz in 1616, wherein she returned to Leonberg in 1620. She was arrested and imprisoned for 14 months. She was told how she'd be tortured and as a means of frightening her, but she refused to confess anything. And then a year later, she was her son was able to effect her release, and then Katerina died the following year. So the way it's laid out in the book is pretty much spot on for how it actually happened in real life, according to the resources that are available about this woman's story. So I thought that was pretty cool that it's spot on with, some embellishments, right?
Yeah.
So I have some questions here that I found from the Folger Shakespeare Library online. I don't know who they are, but they had some excellent discussion questions. So first off, what are your impressions of the book in general? What'd you think of it?
Well, I wanted to re-listen to it because at first I shared a message with you guys that I'm like, this book is amazing, because I really loved the tone of the book, of the just very straight talking, very real, very relatable, and suffer no fools of Katerina, that she's like, this is dumb. How can anybody be this dumb? Look at how dumb these people are.
Right.
And the very great way that the author made this town from almost 500 years ago feel like you're part of it. But then I was listening to it in such a broken up way that it felt like, and I don't usually give this review, this usually comes from someone else, when nothing happened for such a long time.
Yeah.
The middle was a little trudging for me. I enjoyed it in the sense that the characterizations of the people was still so good. And I think that was maybe also part of the point of it, is they may have never physically tortured her. I think that was the point, is that she really never was truly tortured, just threatened. But the torture of how long from accusation to resolution.
Right.
And the way that slowly tore her life apart. So that might have been part of the point of it, is that this was a long journey of horrible things over nothing.
Right. It was in 1615 that she was accused, right? And then she doesn't get released from prison until 6 years later. So a year of that is spent in prison, but the previous 5 years are spent just gathering accusations and waiting for this trial and going through the trial and all that stuff. So I will agree that it was slow. I think it had potential to be a really not fun, but a really interesting story. And I think it is an interesting story, but I think that the way that it's told was detrimental to the novel, but I did enjoy it. I
exactly. I enjoyed it, but there was long parts of okay, and then what's gonna happen?
Yeah, it was told in a series of interviews and sort of written. I think this flows into the next question, or one of the questions that I have here. It's written in a way that it's sort of interspersed with testimony and letters that are based on real historical documents. So this question is, what did you think of this narrative device? Did you think it was effective, or would you have preferred just a straight up story? Or
I think it was effective in personalizing it. So by telling it in a first person voice, speaking to another person intimately, we become the intimate listener.
Yeah. Yeah, Katerina is illiterate, so she's telling this all to her neighbor Simone for him to write down for her so that she has an account of what's happening. So it's told through both her perspective with sort of like author's notes from Simone and what he's thinking at the time, interspersed with like courtroom dictation of like these different interviews of people who have accused her of this or that, or do they defend her or do they not defend her. And like I said, I think there was too much of that. Like I think that would have been effective to include some of those interviews, but like I felt like 50% of the book was like report from the courtroom, which was not the most exciting part of the novel. Like you said, hearing her account and her first person perspective of what's happening to her was the most entertaining part. She's the best character, I think, and the most entertaining to listen to. Like her wryness and like she suffers no fools, right? And it's very satisfying to listen to the way that she thinks about all this. And I just wish that there was more of that generally.
Yep. And of course, the discomfort of people making things up to suit their own reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that reflecting our current time.
Yeah. Let's see. So what characters were your favorite? Were there any with whom you identified or any you wish had gotten more attention?
I would have actually liked to hear a little bit from, I think, Anna with Simone's daughter.
Mm-hmm. So Galchen, the author, shows us a number of Katerina's relationships with Simone, her children, her cow, and a variety. Camilla. Yeah, Camilla. In my mind, it was Cowmilla, like that was her name.
Exactly. I was hoping it was spelled that way because I listened to the audiobook.
Yeah, it's not. It's spelled like chamomile, like the tea, and I was like, no, her name is Cowmilla.
Duh.
Who do you think Katerina would consider her closest ally?
Ooh. I mean, obviously for a long time it's Simone.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's probably her son, Johannes or Hans or whatever. I feel like with him though, I don't know if this was just the impression that I got, but it was more of a selfish reasoning behind why he was so invested in it. Is because he was an up and comer who wanted his name not to be tarnished and, associated with this, is sort of the feeling that I got from it. Yep. But without his involvement, I don't think she would have been, released, or, it wouldn't have ended the way that it did, I think.
I think Marosha was her best ally. Now, Johannes and Simone were effective in her defense, but Marosha was the only real sincere companion in her life in this story.
Yeah.
That's her young granddaughter.
Yeah, that part was sad. She's definitely most bonded with Marosha and is happiest, I think, when she is with her and telling us about her and all that. And it seemed like at some point, I mean, spoiler alert, Marosha dies, right? And I feel like after that point, she kind of gave up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which was sad because she had so much fight in her throughout the majority of the novel, but at some point she's just like letting whatever happens. And it's not that she isn't defending herself, because she does when she goes to give her testimony, but it's a little lackluster, I think, just because I feel like she has the spark was gone.
Yep. It's interesting, like that, the time in human history where the idea that not all your children, that it's just perfectly normal that not all your children will make it to adulthood, and to be able to function through that,
right?
That's such a foreign idea, because the death of one child is such a crushing idea to me. Forget that you might have many children.
Yeah, that's why you have so many, right?
Yeah. And so like Morosha is the first child figure that you really see her bonded with.
Uh-huh.
Like, of course, she clearly is enamored of her adult children, but she does mention, like, she puts it when we meet Heinrich. I had 4 children who made it to adulthood.
Well, I had a quick interjection about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to a parent, when you are expecting your first, you go to the parenting classes and all that. And they were saying there is a statistic for how many times a woman had to get pregnant at the turn of the night, at the beginning of the 1900s to see 3 of her children live past 12.
Yeah.
No, to live to adulthood. In the early 1900s in America, a woman had to be pregnant 12 times to see 3 of her children get to adulthood because of the childhood diseases and various things. So I imagine at her age, how many times she had to, to have 4 children live to adulthood was pretty remarkable. Maybe something else that her neighbors would also be jealous of, even though there's the one that they don't talk about.
Yeah, she has 4 adult children to adulthood. Like Anne said, you don't know how many there were that didn't make it to adulthood because they don't mention it. But it might just be that she had 4, because a part of the story is that people are jealous of her successful children. So other people may have also lost children in that time. We don't know if Katerina had more and lost them, but I could easily believe that she had 4 and raised 4. One of them died in adulthood, right? But yeah, it's a point of contention between her and probably at least her biggest enemy, I think, Ursula, that she has children, and Ursula doesn't have any. So the other half of this question is, who is her most serious nemesis in this book?
I want to say Ursula, but I kind of think the guy who was in power.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it was all politics for him. He's willing to sacrifice her and do whatever. And he was like, he didn't really want to because he was like, come on, let's make a deal that makes both of us look good.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm not a witch. I'm no. Yeah.
And the whole, like, the beginning of the book is this all comes about because she wants to raise a trial against him for slander, right? So he's saying that she's a witch, and she's like, I'm not a witch. I don't want you to say that I'm a witch. So I'm going to bring a trial against you. And, it's against, the main guy, right? And everybody's like, you probably shouldn't have done that, because now he's like, it's going to make him look bad, which means he's going to go after you even harder, right? So
I think because Ursula has no choice. Yeah, but to go after
Ursula was sort of a pawn for him, but yeah, it was.
What about the other person that was kind of a worm that was with Ursula, who was kind of because he was. I kind of feel like after a while, Ursula kind of goes in the background. She was, like you said, she was just the pawn. She's not important to the story but I was actually even kind of amazed that women could bring a suit.
Yeah, I mean, she had to have a legal guardian with her in order to go to the courtroom to do it. But there's a whole chapter or section of the book that lays out exactly all of the things that Ursula's husband is like. He writes to the Duke, like, here's all the reasons why you should imprison this woman, right? And there are 46 of them that he lists. So there's a lot of evidence that they have gathered in order to try and put her behind bars for some reason.
That was one of the tedious parts. The letter of the 46 reasons.
Yeah.
I would argue that there wasn't really so much. Most of that was not even evidence. It was like all the neighbors having an opportunity to voice their petty opinions and gossip of all the things over the years they didn't like about her. And they finally had to say, yes, I'm going to jump on this bandwagon because this is what I didn't like. And I always had to just keep it to myself. But if we're all complaining, here's my complaint.
Yeah. Yeah. And a majority of them, I think, are proven throughout the book to not be true, but they're still holding on to them because there's strength in numbers, I guess. Yeah, it's interesting who there seem to be so many nemesis of Katerina, and all of them have their own reason for why they are the way that they are, I think. So this next question says, the historical moment of this novel saw communities wrestling with significant shifts in religion and science, as well as the turmoil of encroaching war. To what extent do you think this environment encouraged belief in and persecution of witchcraft? It's like the perfect storm of suspicion, I think.
Yeah, well, it's definitely that opportunity to seize on, like, I don't like this person, I never like this person, I am going to make something up about her.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to take this slight and turn it into the devil's work.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of balance that's happening at this point in time with like the scientific revolution of like what her son is writing about, and the balance between religion and science that is sort of teetering at this point in history. And I was reading about Johannes Kepler, and how all of his observations and writings and everything that he's learning about planetary motion is all still with the lens, like through the lens of religion, right? So everything still relates back to the Christian church that's happening. So it's not until later that they're like, that those sort of separate out from each other. And it's interesting because they keep, especially at the end, like the final closing statements of whoever keeps referring to her what's her son, the astronomer son, your astronomer son. He says that like over and over and over and over, which is like, I think in order to see doubt that he is not of high regard in the church,
yeah,
right?
Because sometimes he's an astrologer,
yeah,
and sometimes he's an astronomer, which in modern times there's a clear distinction between those two ideas.
And at this point in history, in the 1600s, that line is very blurry as to
right?
what is what. So astronomy, astrology, those are
yeah. Ask an astronomer today for a horoscope, see what happens. There'll be some wry wit there, I think.
How does her famous astronomer son live with no one paying him? See, now I actually liked the middle of the book because I felt it fleshed out the characters a lot better, and also showed how she affected the lives. Like, she affected her friend Simone's daughter. Her whole life changed just because she told her to basically put some makeup on.
Mhm.
You know, hey, your life could be different if you would just like care for yourself a little bit more. I mean, I felt like the book showed her impact, not just on the negative, but on the positive. Like, she just a small thing one time. Now his daughter has suitors and all this other stuff. But I kept thinking, how does he go for his whole life with the promise that someone's going to actually pay him? I mean, that his poor wife, having to deal with how do they feed themselves, how do they care for everybody when he's waiting, and then they don't ever pay him.
I think the economics of that is that money went further, and that he was probably getting like big sums, like lump sums for the things.
He kept talking about he was waiting and waiting and waiting, and then he was angry because they said, nope, we're not paying you.
Yeah, I know
the same thing. So I was kind of like trying to sort that out in my head, that like a penny went a lot further than a penny does now.
That's true. Yeah.
And then people had some self-sufficiencies, like they had a cow.
Right.
Like, because at Johannes's house, they had a cow too. They probably had some kind of home garden. Because something I thought was interesting is like Katarina is obviously well off by the, through the impressions of her neighbors, but she has to borrow the baker's oven.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't
like,
think I think
yeah,
people didn't necessarily have ovens
even
because
the
it was
well-off,
such an you might have a stovetop, but a dedicated oven was probably just you wouldn't have use for it, maybe. I don't know.
not in a way that you'd use it every day.
But there was 2 bakers in town, right?
Yeah. She asked to borrow the wrong baker's oven, obviously.
Well,
I have
didn't
a
the other
feeling
baker owe her money?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's where I go to.
Yeah. Be like, you
Yeah,
owe me, let me use your oven.
Yeah.
exactly. But maybe his oven's not as good. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's exactly. He owes me. Why wouldn't I say, here's how you return the favor,
Yeah.
right?
And also I had the impression that the baker whose oven she borrowed was closest too.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that Simone would get his bread at too.
Right. Because at the end he goes there and is like, oh no, he used the other one. Never mind.
Yeah. But
I
at
get the
some
sense
point he does.
I feel like Katerina is kind of a loud, kind of abrasive, unaware person in a sense that while she observes everybody else, she doesn't observe her effect sometimes on other people. And this is why so many people are annoyed with her because she is so loud and demanding. You must help me. You must help me. But then she doesn't necessarily return the favor because she forgets about that. I think that's part of some of the grievance that some of her neighbors had is she comes in like everything, is life or death with her. I like the drama. I thought this book had a lot of really good drama.
Yeah, it was like I was reading a review that sort of equated it to like Jerry Springer courtroom drama, but in 1600s Germany. And I was like, I like that.
Yeah, that's it.
That's fair.
What do you think drove Ursula to accuse Katerina? Do you think the matter would have been dropped if Katerina hadn't been recording it? And what do you think of Katerina's decision making during her experience? Do you think there are things that she should have done or not done?
I think Ursula was put up to it by her brother.
You don't think Ursula had like they had like a adversarial relationship already?
They did, but if this is, I get the sense that this is the first time Ursula. I mean, yeah, because they did say they were friends at one point. And then over time, I mean, Ursula made some of her own bad choices and she blamed it on her friend because I don't know, something else. I think something else was going on there, and that was the thing that set her off. But I don't know that it would have gone as far if her brother hadn't gotten involved. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the brother was her guardian. Like there was no good feelings from the cabbage.
The cabbage.
Do
you think he knew that she called him that? Probably.
I'm sure it was a common nickname. Like I think everybody in town was calling him the cabbage behind his back.
I like.
Oh, that's horrible.
Because one thing, like I hear you on that Ursula being a tool of the men around her, but you don't like. I don't want to take away from just the.
Oh, she was mean
between the women, because that's real, right?
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, when times are tough and push comes to shove, it's easy to throw your fellow comrade under the bus in order to save yourself in any sort of situation. So if it's your fellow woman, your neighbor who, in good times it's easy to be like, yeah, we're buddies, but times are tough and I got to look out for me and mine.
Well, they were good enough friends to drink wine together.
Yeah.
At some point. I mean, you're not sitting at my house drinking wine and you're two of my best friends. So
yeah.
What do you think of Katerina's decision making? So again, do you think there are things that she should or shouldn't have done during the process of this? At some point, she's staying with Johannes in Linz, and he's like, "You're not going home. You can't go home." And the very next chapter, she's like, "I was so happy to be home." It's
Yeah.
like, maybe we shouldn't have gone home.
I was thinking that would be the number one mistake, but yeah, I like that was her number one because I was like, but then because staying out of Linz was out of what's the hometown?
Leonberg.
Landberg. It's not the only thing that was keeping her safe because when she goes to Greta's, she's in another place and they carry her out naked. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like being a widow for so long, she was so used to being independent and having her own mind. And she was not one who was ever going to tread lightly. Like you said, she wasn't going to suffer fools, but neither was she going to give her will to someone else. And if she wanted to do what she was going to do, she wasn't going to listen to reason. She really did not see the politics involved until it was too late. She really didn't believe that it was that big a deal or that it would just blow over and she'd be fine. Because I don't know, maybe that was something that was just more in the men's world, that kind of level of politics and how much power someone had. But in her own small sphere, I feel like as a widow, she was used to having her own power.
Yeah.
She just could imagine a world where that was taken away.
That's such a willful choice to disregard because like her daughter-in-law is like, did you hear what happened to the last woman who was accused of being a witch? Let me tell you about what happened to her. Like it's very willfully ignorant.
Yeah.
Which we're all guilty of, but from our own point of view, like don't we all want to ignore that the consequences are for us?
That's just their choices. That wouldn't happen to me.
Well,
right.
We shared the funniest thing because the huge lotto that was just up for grabs. There was something out in the internet. Someone says heart disease affects like 1 in 5 people, but everyone's like, that's not going to be what happens to me. Winning the lottery is 1 in like 200,000 people, but it could be me.
It could be. You never know.
We go through our lives so often of like, okay, so yeah, that's a common occurrence, but it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
That's not going to be my reality. Like 15 women in my village have been accused of witchcraft, but that's not me.
That's not me. Yeah, you could see how an outspoken woman who, you know, knows a lot about apothecary and stuff like that could be a little suspicious. I also read something about like witchcraft in this time is associated with like this is the view of a witch, and a lot of witches are seen to have like familiars. So is her cow her familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she loves that cow.
Oh, I love
Camilla.
Which is talking about finding out the cow's real name.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's gonna get in so much trouble for that.
Yeah, totally. I loved that. I was like, that's totally her familiar, a cow.
Yes.
Let's talk about Simone. So he wrestles with himself as to whether he could have done more to help her. Do you think he could have?
I think he could have stood by her for longer.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that would have been any more effective than anything else.
Yeah, at some point he does sort of step aside and like distance himself, which I can understand why you would do that. But he is guilty. He feels guilty at the end that he sort of abandoned his friend, right? So I don't know if he was necessarily in a position to be able to help more in the sense of the trial, but I think he could have helped Katerina more in the sense of just being a friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are the dynamics of these two at this point in life? I mean, I know she's older, a lot older. She's a single woman. He's a single guy. There's not really a romantic thing going on, but there's definitely, I don't know. I'm surprised he sticks by her as a guardian. Why does he do that when he doesn't?
There are some people who their word is their bond, right? So he said he would, so of course he would. So there are some people who like just stand by their word and they don't have a different motivation. I think if he had a deeper motivation than his word, then that would have been more durable when things got harder in his personal life. I think that they're purely companions because there's a hint somewhere in there that he might be, that he might be gay. Remember when he's talking about his time in the monastery?
Yeah.
So it's just very, very lightly hinted. And so I really just think that they're dear companions, that he's someone who's quiet and not withholding, but not easy to give his friendship. And she breaks through that barrier and becomes his companion.
Like a wrecking ball.
She just walked right into his house.
But that's a common, like an opposites attract situation, right? Where you have the introvert with the extrovert who brings them out, at least privately.
Yeah.
I can see on his part, it would be very overwhelming to be drawn deeper into all of the legalities and even the gossip of the neighbors and having that affect your life when you're just a quiet person who just wants to go about your business and, leave yourself to yourself and take care of your daughter. I can see that it can be overwhelming, and that's why he might have needed to step back just to catch a breath. Because it's way more than I think his involvement was just sucked in more than he was originally prepared to do.
Well, I think that he's a very good example of hyper focus because there's some point, I don't remember what the exact gossip had come up. Oh, maybe it's when he meets the traveler who tells him the story of Katerina's arrest. And I think that's when he's like, haven't you heard? And he's like, no, I was working on a stirrups order or something. So like, he just loves to lock himself in his workshop and work hard. And Katerina like gave him something different to pay attention to.
Yeah. Okay. So Johannes Kepler is a well-known scientific figure, yet you could conceivably read this book without recognizing him in it.
Why not? Yes, you could.
Yes, you could.
What do you think of the author's decision to distance him from the story the way that she did?
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Because don't you wonder about the lives of famous people's brothers and sisters and moms?
Yeah.
They're just normal. And the fact that they have a famous child or sibling or whatever is just part of their periphery. Because you're the main character of your story, right?
Yeah. And she was definitely main character worthy without her son being in the story, for as little as he did.
Was her other son a lawyer?
He was a pewterer.
I think, didn't he become a lawyer?
He became her advocate.
At the end.
He absolutely did. You're right.
Yeah, I think he was probably inspired by all this that happened, was like, you know what? I'm going to go into law.
Well, it's sort of like people who have a chronic illness, and I'm sure our families who go through massive legal battles too, is you become such an expert in that thing. You could probably go do that profession.
Yeah.
I just said if you're knowledgeable about someone's chronic illness that you could become a doctor. I did say that.
We're not debating that. How does Katerina compare to other characters you've come across in books, movies, or TV who are also associated with witchcraft? Is there anything about her as a witch that surprised you, or does the representation of a witch follow any other sort of characters or stories that you know of? Does she remind you of any other witches?
This is actually perfectly done. I have to give props to the author on this because they show us the perception of a witch. And then they show us her affinity for nature, her apothecary knowledge, and all of those like positive things that supposed witches have the magic to do.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most artful parts of this book is the demonstration, just the subtlety that like Katerina, you might be a witch. That might be real, but
Yeah.
not the kind of hurtful black magic in league with the devil witch that your
Being
cohort
accused
is
of.
accusing you of.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting reading this in the lens of a in this day and age, right? Where people actually claim themselves to be witches in more of a sort of religious spiritual sense than a, you know, you could be a Wiccan and that's like a somewhat respected viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that those same people, if they shared that same viewpoint in the 1600s and, you know, in Germany at this time frame, would have been tried as a witch, right? That they're evil, that they, you know, that they are in conspiracy with the devil, right? It was interesting because I didn't really know a whole lot about the witch hunts in Europe in this time as much as I knew about like Salem witch trials and the American colonists and stuff. So
Yep.
that was the part of the novel that I really liked, is like I didn't know the extent of all that, right? So I appreciated that. And that sort of leads into this last question that I have is like, think about the reasons that she was accused of being a witch. How would the elements of her witchcraft be viewed if they were practiced today? Like, what sort of person would she be in today's day and age?
Well, I think as an outspoken woman, she'd still be reviled.
Yeah.
Yep.
An outspoken woman in because she was in an influential sphere. So you'd have to imagine that she would have, in this day and age, she'd probably have a presence of her own. And so I still think that people around her, men and women, would revile her. Men would be threatened by her personal power, and women would be jealous of her.
Yep.
Because you can't win for losing, because women hate you as much as men hate you in that kind of situation. Different reasons, I think. But
yeah, totally.
I still think she'd be in trouble.
Yeah, a lot of people would be telling her to stay in her lane.
Yeah.
And she'd like, the whole road is my lane.
But I think that she would be more positive she would be lauded in other circumstances if people could see her talents and her care for others as a knowledgeable, you know, think of the people you follow on social media. If you follow any people like that, like Witch Bitch Thrift is one of my favorites, the Black Forager. Yeah, the knowledge and the things that they share about how they live their lives, to me, is admirable. And I love being able to observe their ideas and thoughts. So in some ways, I think that she'd be well received and have her own popularity.
Yeah, definitely. I see
She'd
her
be
sort of like
famous.
Insta famous, yeah.
I see her as sort of like an older, influential woman in her own like town. Like I imagine her in like Ojai owning an apothecary shop.
Yes.
She would probably even run a spa, a wellness spa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because she's a savvy businesswoman too. That's a good point, Karin. Is that like she's running a business? She lends money. She has lands that are leased. Because I wonder too, that's part of what Johannes's success is, or like ability to thrive, is that there's some sort of family money there.
Yeah,
That's
he was
true,
privileged
because
enough to go to university and to different schooling and things like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, she definitely was in
That's
a position of power. She wasn't a lowly peasant woman, you know. She owned her own home. She had a large inheritance from her father.
And that's another motivator from the powers and the neighbors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
She owns a lot, and when she's imprisoned, they start picking off and grabbing as much of her stuff as they can get.
Yeah.
They take her land, someone else, they sell off her land. It's like there's that, this one person should not have this much power when we are struggling. How does she have so much? But you're right. I focus so much on how obsessed she was with the son who she had to get food for, and who really wasn't as bad off, but she felt that way. And I didn't think about what she did for her other children as well.
Did you catch the part where like Heinrich just had children around and now one of the siblings is caring for Heinrich's children.
Yes, and that was sort of snuck in there. Well, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that he also, like, she's got a lot of grandchildren.
Yeah. You rogue, you, Heinrich.
Sow your seed where you may.
Well, I mean, I like how you said, Karin, like, no one person deserves that to have that much. I mean, I certainly share in that. Like, we could all crush Elon Musk this week, right?
Yeah.
Let's all leave Twitter. Not that I actively tweet, but we could all crush him.
Yeah, it's like eat the rich, but it
He's
depends
not
on
so
the person that we're focusing on, right?
Right. So sometimes I hold that in my heart too.
Right. Well, that is the end of my questions. So do we have any other final thoughts, anything you want to touch on that we didn't cover?
I want to go back to your question before of what witches does she remind me of?
Yeah.
Practical Magic, the Alice Hoffman series, several novels following the women of that story. And it goes into like the European witch hunts in great depth in one of the novels, actually. If you have not read all the Practical Magic books, I strongly recommend them. They're now one of my absolute favorites. Like, go back and reread kind of favorites.
I've only seen the movie. I have not read any of them.
The books are flipping amazing. And I have no problem with the movies existing for how rich the books are, because the movie is amazing. And I would love them, because actually the next book after Practical Magic is far enough in the future that all the living women, I can't remember if all the older witches are alive. I think so. That there could be a reprisal right now. And it would, and the Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock are the perfect age to be in the next story.
Well, that would be cool.
I don't think that's slated, so oh well.
Well, I think that is it for our discussion of this book. So anybody else read anything good recently? I haven't read anything.
I read a great book.
Read what?
I read a very good book.
Yeah.
So this book wasn't so spooky, but I think it was a great October choice, Katie. I augmented this with some actual horror reading, which I know you've been doing a lot of, Karin. And I have to say, I haven't read like a lot of horror other than Stephen King, but it's a really good genre.
It is, yeah. Like I said, I'm no good with visual horror. I don't want to see scary movies, but I like a thriller in my head. And speaking of scary things, it's not so much a book, but I've been listening to Camp Monsters because I just started it. Okay, I love Mothman.
Yep.
I haven't looked at the Mothman one yet, because isn't that a more current one? Or is that
I started at the top. I started current and going back.
Okay,
it's like super creepy. I love listening to creepy
Mothman.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna. That's all I'm saying is I love.
Katie, they did one set in Ojai. Have you listened to that one?
Yes, I have. Is it Charman?
Yeah, I had never heard of Charman. First of all,
we've heard of. I know all about Charman.
I had not, because I didn't grow up in this county.
Yeah.
But one of my coworkers, he spent 30 years in Ojai, and I was telling my youngest coworker about, like, you have to listen to this podcast because there's one in Ojai. It's so good. And the other one walks in, he's like, "Oh, Charman," and he's laughing. I'm like, "Well, do you have any good stories about that?" And he's like, "Oh no, no,
you just know about him."
So now when I think about the narrator telling the stories of the localities he tells them in, I mean, if nothing else, he looks closely at a map. Because when he's telling the Ojai one, he's like, and Joe was on the Ojai Avenue, and then he turned onto Montgomery, and he turned onto Sulphur Springs. I'm like, chills, because that's real. That's a real path to get there.
Yeah, anyway. It's such a good podcast. I for whatever reason have been distracted enough that I haven't listened to this season this year. But I am excited to get back to it. I think it was last season that was like all Bigfoot all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, which is
Oh,
set up like the premise is it's a IKEA knockoff, and this particular store is haunted. And
what's
it's
the
a
title?
story Horror, HORORSTOR. And
Horror. Horror.
there's an umlaut over the third O. So the book it's worth buying the book instead of the audio. The audio book is probably plenty entertaining, but the book is set up like an IKEA catalog.
Mm.
Like I had it
I
sitting
love
in the living room, and Marabella's like, "Oh, look at that couch on the cover! It's so cute."
I love
And
Grady Hendrix. He's funny.
well, I hadn't realized I have an audiobook that was a free Audible that's waiting for me, which is like We All Sold Our Souls. So I'm very much looking forward to listening to that. I'm reading another guy who the Horror Store was amazing. It was so fun, and I couldn't put it down. I read it so quickly. There's another guy who has several books that are like sets of novelettes. Ronald Malfi. And these are fantastic. So I'm about halfway through the book Ghost Written, which is 4 novellas, not novelettes. And they're very good. They're intertwined because there's like one character from one will kind of have his story carry through to the next one. And this set is all about kind of haunted books. Is very good. So I'm enjoying this genre.
Yeah, I haven't read anything else this month. I did read Pumpkinheads. I picked it up when I went to the bookstore for their like birthday party celebration. It was very cute.
Yeah.
Very cute. I read it in like an hour.
Yep. It's also hard to put down.
Yeah, I mean it went very quickly, but it was very cute. I liked it a lot.
Well, I've been mostly in podcast land. Let me see. I just started a book that's a sequel to The City. It's called The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin, and I got to sit in yesterday evening, not yesterday evening, Thursday evening on a Zoom with the author, which was really awesome.
That's cool.
Because I had bought the book, there was like a private group of 50 people.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's real cool. The Memory Librarian. Did I start that one before? Because that one's really good with Janelle Monáe.
Yeah, I think we talked about that one.
Yeah, I'm still just continuing with. I have it. And I'm reading The Shadowed Sun, also by N.K. Jemisin. But all of those I put to the side so I could jump into The World We Make, which is the book 2 of a duology. I think The City We Became was the first one, and The World We Make is an expansion of the Great Cities duology. But other than that, I like I said, I've been in podcast land.
Yeah, I have 2 recently. I have a new podcast that I was like binging through, so I didn't listen to books this month as much. But so what are we gonna read next? Whose turn is it?
It's my turn.
It's Anne's turn. What'd you pick?
All right. Well, I had this is my alternate plan. I'm saving what I had chosen for later. Okay. So this is called Small Angels by Lauren Owen. A wedding in a small English village attracts a malicious spirit, forcing deep secrets to the surface. A hypnotic tale of sisterhood, first love, and hauntings. Because I want to stay spooky all year.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So this book feels also kind of cozy for the winter. So that's where I'm going to leave us hanging on it. So that's Small Angels by Lauren Owen.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Awesome.
Excited. And this is like one of those books where I took a picture of it in the bookstore. Like, I got to read that. I got to remember it. And I wasn't sure I could wait for you.
Well, thank you for waiting.
But I did. Yay! Well, don't thank me yet.
Okay.
Oh, well, one last thing. I did pick up a book from a local author at Super Buzzy. Is that the one you guys talked? Did you guys already talk about that one?
No, I haven't dug into it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
I don't have it in front of me though. Do you remember the name of it, Katie?
It's by Bryn Stevens. It's called Atrocious Immoralities, I think.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet.
It's like a historical sci-fi fiction, I think, something like that. Anyway, I just wanted to put a little plug in for a local author.
Yeah.
You can buy the book online, or you can get it locally at Super Buzzy, and then the author gets 100% of the proceeds.
Yeah.
So I just want to put a little plug in that for her.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we have reached the end of our time here today. So if you read this book and you want to discuss it with us, shoot us an email or leave a comment or come see us and we could talk about it in person. If not, maybe you'll join us for the next one. So next month we'll pick up with Anne's book. And in the meantime, we hope you have a great month and we'll see you later.
Oh, wait, and the boutique. If you're in town, come to our boutique on the 19th.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
And if you're not in town and you listen to us from afar, you will be able to find our goods on our website, stringsandthingsstudio.com. And we offer local pickup and shipping.
Yeah, and all the info on the event is on our website too. So stringsandthingsstudio.com. Thank you, Anne, for remembering the plug. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye everybody.
Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio with Anne Lekravin-Kazoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Wilmoth. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.